How many of you have either like get an email saying, hey, your password's about to expire. You need to reset it. Otherwise, you can't access your email or your maybe your online account, Dropbox, anything within 24 hours. That's one of the common things that we get, and that's where clients was getting concerned about, right? Most business owner may not pay attention to this, but if you're the one who is, I don't know, running ads or doing campaigns for clients, and you see the server bill or the ads bill is going up, you need to pay attention. Why is that? Are you actually getting traffic or just something that's happening behind the scenes that you don't know what's causing it? And then lastly is when they observe that you have access problem errors or systems slowing down, it's what's happening behind the scene is somebody is trying to use your computing resource or servers to do things on the back end that maybe is sending out malicious emails or hosting pages on your website for clients that are perhaps doing things such as hosting a download to some of the emails that people send out.
All right, thanks everyone for being here at the Law Firm Growth Ideas podcast. We do our best to dig into a lot of ways, tricks of the trade, how law firms can grow, in this instance, how they can protect themselves and their assets. Today, we're going to be talking about how the war in Iran might be impacting IT at your law firm and giving some real world examples. Leading the discussion today is going to be Matthew Kang. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Matthew?
Yes, Matthew Kang.
I should know that. We've known each other. I should know that. Matthew is a data security and IT expert. If you got any questions after the podcast or at any point, please feel free to talk to him. If you look to me to help with your IT, I will destroy your entire law firm. So I'm Joe Marchalewski. I do law firm public relations with my company AIJ Communications. Today, we're going to be talking about how the Iran conflict is increasing cyber risk to businesses, specifically law firms, where law firms are exposed in email through Microsoft 365 and others, how small IT issues reduce billable time and create gaps, and the KISS, the KISS plan, and what to prioritize now to protect data and operations. Matthew, you're leading us, so why don't you start us off?
Thank you, Joe. Can everybody hear me okay? Still good? All right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I call this thing, we call it the silent war on Main Street, because a lot of people hear about the news, what's happening with Iran and the US, right? But what they probably may not be aware of is what's happening behind the scenes about all the attacks that's happening on your computer system, the battles that you may not be seeing in your inbox that are coming in on a day-to-day basis. So what I want to do is just share a bit some of the things that we learn. And some of this is also live scenarios or case studies that Joe shared with me as well from some of his clients. So we're going to talk about that and some of the things that you guys can do. And also we have the opportunity to like take questions at the end of this as well. I'm going to share my screen real quick. So the story is a lot of things that are happening on the back scene is not something that you hear about in the headline news for small law firms. And this is the scenario where Joe brought this up to me about some of his clients where their website was slowing down, their server bills were going up, and the ad spend was still running. As a result, they seem to be getting perhaps like this is a Bay Area personal injury law firm, right? The intake emails was spiking up, meaning that they feel like there's more businesses coming in. But in the reality is it's not actually these guys are spamming them. And what they're seeing is situations where instead of actually real leads, these are hackers who are trying to probe their security, whether they can get into their system, whether they're willing to click on any suspicious emails, right? And so as a result, they're not actually getting business. They're trying to figure out how to break into the system or disrupt their website. And then when they trace this back, it went back all the way to Germany where all the traffic was coming in. And this is where it's not just for this situation, but it's a repeated patterns. Joe, I don't know if you want to add anything to that before I continue.
Well, I think we have time where I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. I think that's a good introduction.
Great. So the thing that I wanted to go into more detail is how what they're focusing on right now, what we're observing is most of the stuff that we're noticing is these are the smoke signal for law firms to pay attention to. Like when you're seeing unusual increase in volumes of emails that are coming in. One of the biggest things that we have seen or observed when we had in the first quarter of this year, right? We didn't get a lot of like law firms contacting us, but right after the war started, we started to getting a lot of businesses, the law firms across the US from Florida, LA, and even from London contacting us as like we're seeing unusual volumes of spam. We're not sure why. We're getting daily bombarded and we're concerned about our security. And that's where these unusual behaviors are coming in that people need to pay attention to. Other things that you may get is password reset. How many of you have either like get an email saying, hey, your password's about to expire. You need to reset it. Otherwise, you can't access your email or maybe your online account, Dropbox, anything within 24 hours. That's one of the common things that we get, and that's where clients was getting concerned about, right? The unexpected server bill spike going up. Most business owner may not pay attention to this, but if you're the one who is I don't know, running ads or doing campaigns for clients and you see the server bill or the ads bill is going up, you need to pay attention. Why is that? Are you actually getting traffic or just something that's happening behind the scenes that you don't know what's causing it? And lastly is when they observe that you have access problem errors or systems slowing down, it's what's happening behind the scene is somebody is trying to use your computing resource or servers to do things on the back end that maybe is sending out malicious emails or hosting pages on your website for clients that are perhaps doing things such as hosting a download to some of the emails that people send out. Joe, if you have anything to add, otherwise I will continue.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, so Matthew does a great job of talking. He's going to dig into sort of the technical side of things. Where I tend to see stuff is what shows up on a web page or maybe the more obvious signs, which I think is a sign of why it's really important to have an IT expert like Matthew. But from what we saw, what I sort of key in on is I get some attention from, we had intakes that spiked for no real reason or for no particular reason for certain clients. We saw, again, one thing Matthew and I talked about is the language used when these, I think we used to call them phishing emails, right, Matthew? They will have this urgency. You have to. It's not just reset your password. It's reset your password or else kind of stuff. And that's one of the things where attorneys, law firm owners, and others who are connected to any website need to be very conscious of that language. It's kind of like the IRS will never call you. The IRS sends letters. And so it's understanding, kind of being educated or having experts who are educated in the language used by server companies, by web hosting companies. All of those will speak a certain way. Someone like Matthew will know that. And so the rest of us kind of have to have Matthews in our lives to trust when these things occur, because 20, 25 years ago, how many of us clicked on an email that was kind of a BS email, but we had to learn our lesson one way or the other. And these, the tactics have changed, but it's a similar thing of learning how to decipher, the scams from the legitimate stuff. But yeah, there are these little things that need to be paid attention to that Matthew's pointing out, because they're a sign that, if it's more than one of these things, you probably have a serious issue.
All right. Yeah. So some of you may say, hey, I'm covered because I have insurance. If something happens, we're covered. We have, cyber insurance. Let me ask you, of the clients that you work with, how many of you, when was the last time you guys checked your cyber insurance policy to determine whether there's this exclusion called act of war exclusion that's in your cyber insurance policy, whether it's in your policy that if your system or your network's been compromised and it is related to a state sponsored, whether it is in Iran or any other countries, will they cover it? I don't know. Rob, did you go and check your policy?
Not yet, but it's on my list.
So I asked this because most people know whether this exists or not, but it could be buried in your policy somewhere in there. And we say this because who would guess that if you get denied? But here's the thing. Even if it's not related to the war, what we're seeing is this term called duty of care. If you try to file a claim, they're going to scrutinize your application and to check whether do you have multi-factor authentication on all the devices or on all your users that you when you fill out an insurance policy, usually check off these things that you said, I'm going to do these following things, right? That includes whether you have patch management update, you have backup, and if you have, anything that you train your employees on cybersecurity awareness training. If they find that some of these things were not done, there's a likelihood that your coverage could be denied or excluded, or even in some case, maybe reduced. And I bring this up because this is not something that most of us even pay attention to. So any of you here have worked with clients that do check or ask you about their policies?
I don't know that, Matthew, but I've worked, one of my clients does insurance bad faith. And so to harken back to a time that we really all loved and enjoyed, 2020 and 2021, a number of insurance carriers used these same claims as acts of God when it came time to making claims and paying out claims. And so I think everyone needs to be aware that if you think you have insurance, when these things happen, when there's a war with Iran or whatever we're going to call it, and there are several attacks, you're not the only one who's going to be making a claim. There will be hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of other individuals and corporations making the same claim. And so an insurance company's first line of defense is going to be to reject you for all these reasons that Matthew's talking about. So it's one of those, right, Matthew, of like, insurance is one of those things you don't want to, you want to buy and put in a drawer, but really we need to review those because, in times like this, it has to matter.
Yes. And you hope that insurance will get you out of a jam when you need it, right? But you're paying, I don't know, 4,000, 3,000 a year. And then when you go and say, hey, I have a problem, can you help me? And they say, well, it doesn't. And you're not going to get your premium back. So that's why I bring this up. Just pay attention to some of these things because it'll help you in the long term. One of the other things that I often clients ask is, well, nothing has happened to us before, so we're not gonna, we don't need ongoing security and policies. We'll call our IT guy, or we're gonna Google somebody when we have a problem. And I wanted to just help business owners and individuals who are, let's say, a law office manager who's managing it, understand what happens, what a typical cost would be if you are waiting for something to happen. The difference between being proactive versus reactive IT security is one of those things that we probably don't think a lot about until you have to add up all the bills. And here's what I wanted to show you. This is a typical example of a law firm, a 12 employee law firm, right? If you add up the $88,000 a year, most people may think, wow, that's seems unlikely. I don't know. Would you guys see that as a surprise? Now, I bring this up because this is the national average of cost of, if you add up the emergency IT fees, downtime, lost billable hours, breach recovery costs. So when we've been in a situation where we had to deal with insurance company to file a claim, if you have computers, servers, and it's been compromised, they said, well, you can't touch those computers. You have to wait until the forensic people go and analyze all of that. In the meantime, you have staff who's sitting around who needs to do work. So what do? You can't just go and reinstall Windows OS and wipe everything. They said you have to keep them as evidence for them to go through. So one of the clients we dealt with, they had to go buy all new computers while waiting for the insurance company to come and analyze this. That's the lost productivity and downtime for staff. Compare that to a proactive IT ongoing cybersecurity who can help you. This is what we find. If you are on a proactive support, your IT and management costs, if you look at it, it's going to be higher upfront. However, if you looked at the proactive monitoring, staff training, relatively, it's about $28,000 for a similar size law firm. And I share this with you because most people probably don't pay attention to all of this, given that we don't want to pay for anything until there's a problem. If you look at the ROI, it's 204%. How many of your clients feel like this is a good return on investment? If you get that type of investment. Joe, I can go into more detail on some of the things that I feel it would be needed, but I want to give you time to also share your thoughts.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about how we dealt with it from a bit of a different perspective, right? Because like I said, I don't have the IT background that Matthew does. I do marketing and public relations. So when I see problems on a website, it's not from a technical vantage point, it's from the end user sort of vantage point. What we noticed the first time was with a personal injury attorney, prominent personal injury attorney in the Bay Area. Their site was hacked, it went down, which led to obviously the site going down. But when a site goes down, there's several things attached to that. Thankfully, not emails, but what was attached was social media ad campaigns. There were intake tools attached to that. So when something goes down, there's a ripple effect to all of it. And we had to shut some stuff down. And thankfully, we responded pretty quick. And Matthew would tell you there are tools that your SEO, and if you don't have SEO, that you can tap into that will let you know of any outages pretty quickly, on your site, or if your server has any issues, it will let you know sort of right away. So the site went down. When we did a diagnostic, we saw traffic had spiked in a really weird way. We were getting bills from servers and intake calls, or the intake chat bot that all of a sudden said, well, we need to increase your bill, to Matthew's point. We need to increase your bill because you're getting all these more requests. And then, so the site was already down. We had to go in, put it back up, put some new security measures in within a few days. And it was not, the timing of it was about the time the United States started bombing Iran. Within a few days of that, a second website, we started to see a completely different client. We started to see a spike in traffic, and a similar pattern starting to develop. So we have a really good team that addressed that before it became an issue. I think what's important to remember, we live in a world where if we talked about whether or not water is wet, it would immediately become a political issue, right? What's important to remember is none of the clients who got hacked were political in any way. This is not, it is not as if bad actors are just looking for law firms attached to the current administration. It is simply chaos agents just attacking whatever they can attack. Whether it's, someone instituting AI hacks, which have started, Matthew, I think it was late last year, right? There was the first AI attack.
I want just to add to that. I think one of the reasons why they switched from attacking to, when the war started, Iran was crippled, the internet was crippled and everything, and trying to hack the military was much harder for them to do. So they were looking for easy targets, and businesses were much easier to attack because they don't have as much resource to protect themselves as a military, right? And that's one of the things that I want to point out is there's an example of a larger firm, a $10 billion manufacturing device law firm, not law firm, a medical device. They took down 200,000 computers on their network for a $10 billion company. This is a company called Stryker in the East Coast. It just shows that if these guys have a full IT department and they manage to take down this entire network and all the users were connected to Microsoft 365 were wiped out. If you are a smaller business, your resource and the security you have is going to be, I would say, you're not spending as much, so you're an easier target for them. So therefore, it's better to be more proactive than wait until something happens.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that, like I was saying, you may think you're not a target, but you're not the one deciding who gets attacked. And there is not necessarily a coordination in terms of politics or government attachment. It really can be scattershot. And so I think, Matthew, I think we've got 10, 15 minutes left. There's another, Doug Bradley mentioned, one of the signs is lots of requests for ownership of Google business profiles and Facebook pages. And I think anyone who manages a website or a Facebook account, whatever it is, may have seen emails from Meta. And I will share related and unrelated, a scam that I almost fell for about a decade ago. Or I did fall for and thankfully did not get taken advantage of. And this is an older scam. I got an email from my boss at the time that I needed to go to, and this is going to sound familiar, I needed to go to CVS and get a bunch of gift cards. So, and this is what's funny. So now the email said it was from first name, last name. So it looked like it was coming from my boss. Well, I called him, or however it happened, he and I wound up speaking. And I said, "You sent me this email." He said, "Joe, I never sent this email." I was looking at my phone, I had to dig a little further into the actual email address. One of the things that can help mitigate some of the problems is communication. So if you're a firm owner, if you, whatever our professions are, talking to human beings can help address some of these issues. If you're a law firm owner, or like me, a PR person who has no real technical background, talking to the web developer, talking to the SEO person and saying, "Hey, I think I see this. Is this an issue?" is a really important part of it, because I had to communicate with the individuals who really were running those websites to say, "I think we've got an issue," and then we had a conversation about it. As opposed to some sort of immediate reaction. If you're getting all those emails that say urgent, urgent, urgent password, urgent this, urgent that, and you're just acting on it or guessing instead of, "I think I should call someone. I think I should call my IT person and ask some questions," they will likely be able to clarify everything you're seeing. Just like, when our grandparents get calls from the IRS that say they owe $20,000, and like, no, that's not how the IRS, it's not how the IRS works. It's a similar principle. When a site does go down, Matthew, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, what are the more dangerous avenues that a site can have? Are there particular servers? You in the advertising we mentioned Microsoft. Are there programs that we need to be extra cautious of, or if we have, we need to sort of band-aid up a little bit because they're more susceptible to these types of hacks and attacks?
So a lot of people often think that what's happening is these attacks that we're seeing now, they're not trying to install tools, they're not trying to put something on your system. They're trying to hack the user by you giving them the password. And they get into your system, they do something with that. Just to give a bit more context on that striker compromise. What the bad actors or hacker manage to do is they manage to get into the Microsoft 365 admin console. And from there, they use the Microsoft Intune, which is the mobile device management tool that connects all the computers on the tenant, and they issue a remote wipe to all the devices that are connected to that. This is a tool that a typical, IT administrator or anybody who manage a large network can do. If they manage to do that, they're using the tools to manage the device to also compromise the business, or in this case, disrupt service to the business. That tools exist on many things like remote access, any of the tools such as if you're on Google or Microsoft, they all have their own variations of that. The danger that I think most people may not realize is just when they see something suspicious, they click on, they give their password and nothing happens. They say, "Well, that was bad. Why did that happen?" Then they just ignore it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, Matthew, is if we make a mistake, I think as we become professionals, I think this is like a philosophy, right? If we make we have to acknowledge we may have made a mistake. Like if I, for whatever reason, give my password to someone, I have to tell my IT person that. I have to tell them that, because if I hide it and don't want to acknowledge that I did something stupid, it could just create the chaos for an extra day or two, instead of the IT person going, "Oh, you gave your password out. We have to double back. We have to change it here, lock people out, create a new," whatever an IT person needs to do. So again, it's that honesty and communication that I think is part of the solution.
And that goes to the training, and also I think upper management has to also advocate for that, so that they say, "Hey, we all make mistakes. It's better you tell us now than find out much later."
Right.
All this stuff, I think a couple of things that I want to also mention is most people should verify that what they believe they're backing up and stuff is working as they expect. Most of us say, "Well, we have backup The question is, are you backing on what you believe is important to you? Because what you agreed to back up a year ago may have changed since now because you got new data, you have new things that you're storing, but you may not even realize, hey, my backup requirement has changed. Backup is not important until it is, right? It's when you lose your computer or you actually delete something, it's like, oh man, do I have backup for that? I can't find that file anymore.
Yeah, I had a thought in my head. We can open it up for any questions anyone might have on any of this. And the other thing I was going to say, at this moment, the president of the United States is in China with several CEOs. These are moments where the news may drive some of this, right? If negotiations go sideways, which tends to happen, that could lead to an increase in attacks. And I don't feel, this is a political statement, I feel there's been some issues with varying programs and software that aren't being communicated very well. I've had issues with Zoom over the last few months, for example, and several other individuals have had similar issues. And it might be a software update. It could also be some sort of hack that Zoom doesn't want us to know about, or that politicians don't want us to know about one way or the other. So I think one thing we all need to be conscious of is, okay, the president is in China for high stakes negotiations. Back up your files. This is a good time to get things in order. If whatever trade negotiations, a new tariff, back up your stuff. Just be aware you may need to deal with some chaos. Change your passwords a couple times that week, that kind of
thing. Just to add to that, about the website, just one of the things that when we set up tenants and stuff, if you're not doing business with companies outside the US, put block access from outside the US to log into your system. So for example, the website, you can use tools that says, well, I don't do business besides people in the US, all my clients are here. So anybody who's trying to access my website outside the US, unless I specifically allow it, it's not going to get to our website. They won't see it. Same thing with your Microsoft or your Google. You want to put conditional access policies that says, well, lock it down. All my team members are in the US, so nobody should be logging in from Europe or India or anywhere else because none of my staff works over there.
Can I ask a question about that? What if they're using a VPN?
They can use VPN. Now, that will work to a certain degree, but you can, we have policies in our system that if we don't know where you're coming from and you don't declare it, we'll block out the VPN.
Okay.
And this happens a lot when people from overseas try to VPN into to look like they're using a proxy to say, I'm actually in the US. And those are very good questions because most of us don't think about that, but there are people who will do that, and there are tools that say, well, if I see you logging in a VPN and you don't tell me that you're using VPN, we can automatically lock you out.
Are there, without going down too many interesting rabbit holes, are there websites that can open up, that if you go to, start to open things up for potential danger?
So one of the things that often happens when somebody try to, I would say, steal data from your system, you normally would click on a link, and that links will download something to your computer. It initiates a call back out to do that. And a typical example is DocuSign. Most people will get a document, hey, we need your signature on this. It's actually coming, the email address looks like it's coming from DocuSign. But when you click on that link, it redirects you to a malicious site.
Yeah.
And that malicious site may download something. And if your system doesn't aggressively detect that, it will download what they call like a small payload, and then it'll fetch the rest of the data in the background. It doesn't download it around instant, but it'll keep trying to fish for pulled data or the rest of the code into your system. And then it could probe you.
All right, we've got a couple minutes left. If anyone's got any questions, if not, maybe Matthew, if you want to list a couple of, if you've got questions, please add it to the chat and we'll address before 12:40. In the meantime, Matthew, are there, outside of hiring Matthew, what are ways people can protect themselves? Are there software? Are there things they can download? What's the best idea for that?
So first thing I'm going to say, check to make sure that if you log on to anything, just verify that you have two-step or multi-factor authentication. Okay, most people have it, but to certain degrees, they may or may not have everything. I think the SMS is pretty typical, and most people will asked, is it better to use a mobile app such as Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator? It is much more secure to use a Authenticator app because, as you know, text message and stuff can be intercepted. Authenticator app is tied to your device and it's installed to that. Another even more secure is using what they call passkey or using a one of those security key. I don't know if you can see this. It's a Yuba key. This allows you to it ties that down, you put it into your system, it's a lot more secure.
Yeah, and you anticipated Rob's question pretty well.
And the other thing is confirm that you have backup, that test your backup. Go and restore something, because even though the backup says it's successful, go and try and restore something that you feel like, hey, I'm just going to verify that my restore worked, because time again, I try to restore something from a backup company. They say, oh, we're not sure why it's not working. Let us check. I'm like, if you don't randomly or test restore, you may not realize that it's not working.
Yeah. All right. We are coming up against it. That is our time. Thank you everyone for attending. We will have another event next month. I believe Sharon is leading us next month, if I'm correct.
That is correct. All
right. Well, thanks everyone for attending and appreciate it. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.